Hey, everybody. Um, Last Sunday, we talked about the story of Thomas. And whenever you bring up Thomas, people immediately start to think about doubts. Um, and usually not in a positive light, although I try every year to make sure that we understand that it's not just Thomas that has doubts, that all of us have doubts, and that in fact our doubts are actually part of our faith. Um, I suspect during this time you've had your doubts. You've had doubts about why God would allow this disease to cause so much hardship, so much calamity over the whole of the earth. You've had doubts about um, leaders whom God has equipped us with and placed around us to lead us forward, and you've had doubts about whether God had given you what you needed to get through this time. Not just toilet paper, but whether God had given you what you needed internally, spiritually, mentally, physically, the ability to handle the stress that these sorts of times cause. You add to that things that people often platitudes that are put out there about faith. God only gives you what you can handle, and I've always responded to that. Well, I wish God didn't think so much of me. Um, but all of these things are really not helpful when we're struggling, when we're in those times of doubts. But I came across a couple of things today in my reading of the devotion, and then that reminded me of another verse. And so when I was reading the God Pause devotion today from Luther Seminary, it was looking at the verse from First Peter that we will read as part of our lessons next Sunday. And the one verse that really struck me is in First Peter chapter 1. I think it's chapter 1. Hang on. Yeah, First Peter 1, verse 21. It says, "Through him, through Jesus, you have come to trust in God, who raised him from the dead and gave him glory, so that your faith and hope are set on God." I love that because what it tells me is that it's not because of me that I believe this. It's not because of my ability or my great faith that I can understand and comprehend and trust what God is doing. It's my trust, my faith isn't about my ability at all. It's only and ever about the truth of Christ, that Jesus is alive, that Jesus lives. Through him, you have come to trust in God. Through Jesus, the one who died and was resurrected, we've come to trust in God. Another that reminded me of another verse that often comes to mind, and I had to look back to see where it comes from. It's the simple verse that comes from actually a parent who brings his child who has been seized by a demon and thrown into what sounds like seizures, is what's happening to this child from his infancy all the way through. And he brings him to Jesus to be healed. And Jesus says, anything can be done for those who believe. And the guy says in wonderful words, he says, "I believe, help my unbelief." Do you hear what is going on there? He says, "I believe, I trust you, but I'm not sure that I have it. Help my unbelief." And Jesus goes on and he heals him. It is in Jesus that we place our trust. It shouldn't surprise us in the least that sometimes we have doubts, because I think most of our doubts, most of my doubts, are really about can we handle this? Can we get through this? And the answer is we can, by the help of God. Uh, Remember that phrase? We say it all the time as we invite new members, as we have baptisms, as we call one another to support each other in prayer. Our answer in worship is always the same: I will with the help of God. God is helping us. God is with us. God is active. God is at work. And though we aren't sure if we can handle it, I pray today that you'll be more confident than ever that God can handle it and that God is good all the time. Let's keep living the story, and I'll see you tomorrow.